Peace and love, fam, and Shabbat Shalom. Hope you all are doing well. Just a quick reflection here. Living off-grid on a small farm has its challenges, right? We have a small solar setup with around 6 panels, a few batteries, and a 5 kVA grow watt inverter, which is usually enough to give us all the power that we need most of the time. So what usually happens, especially this time of year, it gets really overcast and cloudy during the days. So when that happens, the solar panels don't collect enough electricity during the day to charge the batteries fully. So at some point during the night, we can lose power, especially now going into the summer where we have a couple of standing fans that we use to keep ourselves cool at night. So about a week ago, the power cut out around 4:30 a.m. in the morning. It was still very dark. I went out to the solar room to try and start the generator, but it had been backfiring a bit and it wouldn't start, and so I couldn't get it going. So that morning I just literally went back in the house, sat on the living room couch, trying to pray, meditate, just feeling wide awake, helpless. And my mind went to all the things that we're facing now, our impending Namibia visa renewals, the obvious need for more solar panels and maybe another battery. But, based on our current priorities, that's just not something in the budget right now. And I just couldn't help but wonder, how did I get here? From a 3-level house in the US and a 6-figure job to now living in a small 2-bedroom farmhouse with no power, just sitting in the dark. The minutes felt like hours, the seconds felt like minutes. Time was just ticking by very slowly. And in that moment, I longed for the sun to rise. I pined for it, And a little before 6, I decided to put on my workout clothes and go outside for a run. And as I started working out, something struck me. Few minutes past 6, I could see the faintest light of the sun. The darkness was clinging stubbornly, but the light was there, even if I couldn't see the sun itself yet. And that's when I realized this is how the promises of Yah works. I know what He's done in me. I know my testimony. I know how He's changed me. I know this journey is real. It's not make-believe. I believe that He led me here on this journey with my family. And even though it's very hard to see fullness of His promises, to see the full path of the journey, because the darkness just seems to be holding on so tight, I know that His promises are true. And just like I can see the light of the sun long before I see the sun, I see the light of His promises before they come to fullness. And as I was jogging, I started thinking of examples in the scriptures of this, right? David waiting to become king. He was anointed by Samuel as a boy, 1 Samuel 16:13, and it took about 15 years before he was crowned king over Judah, and another 7 years before he ruled all of Israel. And that time wasn't spent in luxury or comfort. It was a difficult time, running for his life, hiding in caves. Then we moved to Joseph, from dreams to destiny, right? At 17 years old, he dreamed his family would bow before him. Genesis 37:5-10. He was betrayed, sold, enslaved, imprisoned, and at age 30, he was elevated to power in Egypt. That's Genesis 41:46. That's a total of 13 years of waiting. We look at Israel and the promised land. Abraham's descendants were promised the land of Canaan, Genesis 15:18, and they spent a few hundred years in Egypt, many of those years in hard bondage, Exodus 12:40. Then 40 years after coming out of Egypt, wandering in the wilderness before Joshua finally led them into the promised land. We look at Hannah, waiting for a son. She prayed year after year. She was mocked by her husband's other wife. We don't know the exact number of years, but it was long enough to feel hopeless, right? And at last, Elohim gave her Samuel, who would become a great prophet. That's 1 Samuel 1. Then we have Simeon. He was waiting for the Messiah. He was promised by the Spirit that he would not die until he saw the Messiah. Luke 2:25-32. And the scriptures doesn't tell us how many years he was waiting, but he waited well into old age until finally holding Yahushua in his arms. And we have Noah. He waited for the flood. After being warned about it, he built that ark for decades. Some people say as many as 100 years. Genesis 6-7 and Hebrews 11:7. Each day he was out there working on that ark was trust and belief in something that was unseen. And who knows all the names and the things he was called. Crazy, among other things, which on this journey that I am on now, I promise you I've been called crazy several times by a few people since moving my family here. Being able to see the full picture of the full journey, I'm not privileged to. The Most High only shows me what I need to see to take the next steps. And so it definitely feels that way sometimes. Just, as Noah hammered, each hammer blow must have felt like, just trusting in something that was unseen. And we have Abraham and Sarah waiting for Isaac. At 75 years old, Abraham was promised that he would father a great nation. That's Genesis chapter 12, verse 4, and chapter 15, verses 4 to 6. And he waited 25 years before Isaac was born, when he was 100 years old. That's Genesis 21, 1 to 2, and verse 5. Now Sarah, who was 90 at the time, laughed at the idea at first, but her laughter of doubt turned into laughter of joy once her baby was born. And I'm definitely no Abraham or Noah or any of these people. There's levels to this thing after all, right? But just kind of looking at their experience and drawing inspiration from it and comparing my own journey to it, and maybe you can do the same. So we see these examples in scriptures of, the light of Yah's promise being shown before the promise itself came to fruition. And, the lessons that I learned that morning is that each of them had promises that took years, some even centuries, to be fulfilled. They had to trust the Father, they had to trust the process, and they had to trust the journey. And that morning, I had no doubt the sun would rise. It is a faithful servant of the Most High that runs its course daily. Why would it be any different? That His promises will come to fruition, that His promises will be fulfilled. After all, He's the one who made the sun. The sun serves Him. So in essence, His promises serve Him, and His word is sure, and it does not return void. So I know that if He speaks it, if He says it, that His promises will come to fruition. And as I ran my drills, and I finally saw the sun break the horizon that morning, and I saw that orb of light in the sky, that circle of light in the sky, I'm telling you right now, I broke down crying, just sobbing. I couldn't control it. Just me in that morning air and the sun, just me and the sky, just me and my Father, just thankful. And I'm not sure why I was crying. Maybe because I felt guilty for doubting Him. Maybe because I was grateful not to be stuck in the dark, just sitting on a couch helpless. Maybe because I realized His promises are more certain than the rising of the sun itself. So, just as we can see the light before the sun itself, we can see the light of His promises before their fulfillment. His word is sure, His promises are faithful, and He will bring them to pass. I hope this has encouraged you in some way, and if it has, please consider sharing it with someone else who may find value in this reflection. Until next time, fam, much love and shalom.